Let's do our purpose, which aligns with this. The purpose of the United Methodist Women shall be a community of women whose purpose is to know God and to experience freedom as whole persons through Jesus Christ, to develop a creative, supportive fellowship, and to expand concepts of mission through global participation of global ministries in the church. Our prayer guide today, our focus is the Bethlehem Center in Jackson, Mississippi. And I was going to do something a little different today. We're going to look at a retiree whose birthday is today, Merrill Adams. He was a missionary in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he now is in San Antonio, Texas. Let's pray. Father God, thank you for loving all. Teach us to live with open eyes and empower us to fight injustices in your name. For we are not to conform to the world, for we all are your children, and this is not our home. Please forgive us when we take our eyes off of you. Let us be quick to forgive each other and see and treat others with the love that comes only from you. Please give us what we need to help us and help us share our excess. May your will and not ours be done. We love you, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And I'm going to do a quick introduction to Emily Jones, and then I'm going to give it to Tawana, who's going to talk about Dr. Coulson. Emily Jones is an executive for the Racial Justice for the United Methodist Women, a national faith-based women's membership organization. And if you're not a member, let me know later and I can hook you up. She leads United Methodist Women's campaign to interrupt the school to prison pipeline. Early on in her career, she noticed the disparity between different racial groups, even on a preschool level, which fueled a passion that has led her to her work today. And I'm going to turn it over to Tawana.
Thank you very much, Brittany. Welcome, Holston Conference United Methodist Women. We are so glad to have you. I know you're seeing a slide there with my name, and I'm already talking ahead of time and everything, but thank you so much. It is with great pleasure that we introduce Dr. Laura Coulson, who serves as Vice President for the Academic Affairs at Bennett College, which is one of our United Methodist colleges. As the Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Coulson provides academic vision and strategic planning that foster active, engaged, and distinctive learning experiences for women of color who aspire to leadership in their fields, social justice, civil rights, and social mobility. Dr. Coulson charges herself with building alliances with external partners that foster student academic success outcomes and enhance the student experience with internships, experiential programs, and student employment. It is with great pleasure that I now present Dr. Laura Coulson.
Good morning and greetings to everyone. As Psalms 133 says, how good and pleasant it is for fellow believers to dwell together in unity. It is indeed a pleasure to come before you this bright, bold, and I don't know if you all have snow, but I do, and blessed morning, united to make a difference as servant leaders. As a United Methodist Church-related institution, Bennett College believes that education should be related to humanitarian ends. And to that end, I am grateful to be before you, the United Methodist Women, and your friends in faith to show our humble thanks for your interest in and commitment to our women scholars. Bennett College prepares women of color through a transformative liberal arts education to lead with purpose, integrity, and a strong sense of self-worth. It provides educational access to students while promoting inquiry, civic engagement, social justice, lifelong learning, and equity for all. Our institution, located in Greensboro, North Carolina, is renowned for its intimate, engaging learning community that produces phenomenal women scholars and global leaders. The undergirding philosophy is that a high-quality college experience should provide its women students with strong academic and co-curricular programs that encourage their personal development, endorse lifelong learning, and prepare them to meet the needs of an ever-changing society. Taking on the leadership of the Academy just a little over 6 months ago, with the support of President Suzanne Walsh, who was recently elected to the National Association of Methodist Colleges and University Boards, along with the faculty and staff within academic affairs, we are ensuring that we are looking to support students in a holistic manner. My research shows that both academic and non-academic factors impact retention of first-generation students and their enrollment from year to year. Having a positive rapport with faculty and staff, personal goal of degree completion, support services provided by the institution, family, parents, and a sense of community. That community that we speak of is you. There is work for us to do together to make the blueprint for our institution a reality. We are striving to ensure a healthy, whole student experience for women that is open to and for the future as we work to be the new frontier of social justice, civil rights, and technology. Now, this is right in alignment with your event this day as we engage now via Zoom. As we work to educate our Bennett Bells on campus and reach beyond in the community through our Children's Defense Fund Freedom School site, established to provide summer reading enrichment for elementary age children, and to other educational collaborations on our campus and beyond, I know today is only the beginning to a long-standing partnership of women of faith, commitment, resilience, and strength, reaching beyond your boundaries to assist those young women who are coming behind you to continue to make a difference in our faith for our communities. Again, on behalf of Bennett College, I thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to great things that will be done with and through you in 2022. Thank you, and many blessings upon you.
Thank you, Dr. Coulson. We really are so excited to join you as a partner. Ladies of Holston Conference United Methodist Women, Bennett College is our hands-on mission project for the conference. There are many exciting things going on. I would encourage you to speak to your units and give a mission offering for this year's hands-on mission project. As you see on the slide, there is the Karen Adair's information. You can mail your contributions to Karen. Please do so. Whatever amount that you are able to give is most appreciative, because God will take that amount and he will multiply it in so many ways. Thank you again for all you do for our hands-on mission project, United Methodist Women of Holston Conference.
Good morning. It is a gift to be with you all today. I thank you so much for having me here in this virtual space. And I'm just so glad to be following the amazing Dr. Coulson. Thank you for your wonderful work at Bennett College, a powerful ministry. As you likely already know, United Methodist Women has prioritized addressing mass incarceration and the criminalization of communities of color with a focus on interrupting the school to prison pipeline. This is for us a continuation not just of the work of the last quadrennium, but really of ongoing core commitments we have had over many decades, commitments to racial justice and commitments to the well-being of children and youth. This has animated our work over the long haul as United Methodist Women. So here's what to expect this morning. We're going to focus the first part of our time on understanding the pipeline more deeply. But for now, let me just note a definition, right? So some of us might be new to the term school to prison pipeline. When UMW uses that term, we use it to describe how children and youth, especially children and youth of color, are rerouted by systems and by institutions, funneled away from educational success and towards the criminal justice system. This is what we are seeking to interrupt. Now, as we seek to deepen our understanding of the school to prison pipeline collaboratively this morning, we do so in a distinctively Wesleyan way. As Brittany mentioned, we do so learning from multiple sources, drawing on what's termed often the Wesleyan quadrilateral: experience, reason, tradition, and scripture, 4 pieces that inform our learning. And so that is the organization for our time together this morning. We'll connect to these 4 pieces. We will learn from scripture. We will have a powerful biblical reflection this morning prepared by Karen, Pat, and Cindy. We will learn from reason, right? From data and facts, from information. I'll offer some national numbers and facts, and Jamie will share locally, highlighting both data and recent tragic events here in the area. We will look to learn from experience, from testimonies, and from stories. So Alice will share some information from this year's Mission U study, Push Out, and Mackenzie will share from some of her own experience in the classroom and beyond. We will also learn from our tradition, right? So I will offer just a brief word on some highlights from our history and the racial justice timeline. The rhythm of our morning will be collaborative and will connect local and national issues. The first part of our day focused on building our understanding. And then the second part of the morning focused on identifying action opportunities. Faith in action, ladies, that's what makes us United Methodist Women. So we will hear from Donna Palmer about local work happening in the Chattanooga area. I'll share briefly on national action opportunity that you can join in on right now in real time. And Donna M. will lead us in thinking through how Holston Conference can get involved in the ongoing advocacy work together. So that is what to expect for our time together. So I'm going to stop my screen share and I'm going to turn it over to Alice, who will get us started as we hear from some of those voices from Push Out.
Good morning, everyone. As Emily has stated, I will be talking about the Mission U study that I participated in this summer, which is Push Out. And here is what the book looks like if you're not familiar with it. It's called Push Out, the Criminalization of Black Girls in Schools. And this, if you have not read it, is a very compelling and powerful book, and I do suggest reading it. You cannot read it in one sitting because it is a very, very disturbing book, but it is very well worth your time and worth a read. There are so many. The author is Monique Morris, and she interviews many girls who have been incarcerated for various situations. And it's very compelling, very thought-provoking. And there are so many instances of the girls that she has actually interviewed, and that she has all their quotes in the book. And I couldn't pick out one. There were so many that I thought were worthy of reading to you, but I couldn't pick out one that was in particularly, needed to be read. But this whole book just chronicles the experiences of Black girls who we are focusing on today, whose intricate lives are misunderstood. They're highly judged by teachers, administrators, and of course the justice system. And they're degraded by the very institutions that are charged with helping them flourish and grow to adults. Push Out exposes a shocking world of confined potential, and it supports the rising movement to challenge those policies and those practices and the cultural illiteracy that push countless students out of school and into unhealthy, unstable, and often unsafe futures. This book is one that will stay with you, I promise, long after you turn that final page and close that book. Like I said, it's a very disturbing book with all the statistics and all the disparities that it talks about. And I certainly recommend this book and hope that you will take some time to delve into this book and read it. You will be amazed. I'm a retired educator after 40 years, and seeing this through the eyes just in my school system, and I was in a small school system, so I can imagine how things were much worse in even larger school systems. So I have seen those disparities firsthand, and I'm sure that Jamie and Donna P. are going to share those from their larger school systems. And it's definitely eye-opening. So I think it's worth your time reading. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alice, for making that connection to our Push Out Mission Youth Study. And next we will hear from Mackenzie, who will continue to inform us from that lens of experience, testimonies, and stories.
Good morning. I'm Mackenzie Mosby. Donna Mosby is my mother, and so I come before you at her request to share about my experience as a 7th grade math teacher and grade level chair in Memphis, Tennessee from over the last 4 years. So I am currently in Nashville at Vanderbilt University studying education policy while working at the state capitol for a state representative, serving in an advising position on education policy there. So I'm coming to you from a lens of experience, but also a lens of policy and kind of like that theoretical knowledge of what's happening. So I appreciate Emily's definition of the school to prison pipeline, right? So there are institutions and systems that are pushing specifically in this conversation, Black girls out of schools. But I think sometimes it's really abstract to think about systems and institutions. And so there's an example that I like to give to help bring this back down to like a level that's real world and understandable. So if you think about a lake and the organisms that live within a lake, you can think about fish, right? And so the water in the lake, as fish are breathing, pass through their gills. So like whatever is in this water, fish are inhaling and they are kind of existing within this system of the lake. And so I want you to think about these terms that we hear, white supremacy, and specifically anti-Blackness in this imagery of the lake. And so first I want to give you the definition for anti-Blackness. So anti-Blackness are behaviors, attitudes, and practices of people and institutions that work to dehumanize Black people in order to maintain white supremacy. And so when we think about the water in the lake, it doesn't matter. So if we think about like pollutions, right, in a lake and water, it doesn't matter how much the fish don't want to be polluted. It doesn't matter which way the fish swims to avoid pollution. They are inhaling and kind of bringing in this pollution. And so think about anti-Blackness in the same way. It doesn't matter how good a person you are or how much you kind of don't want to be racist or these sorts of things. Anti-Blackness is the water in which we exist. And so we're all breathing it in, all of us, no matter our race, our color. And so when we think about the people, when we think about Emily's definition and thinking about the systems and institutions that are pushing these students out, those systems and institutions are upheld by people. And they're upheld by people like you and I, who are breathing in this water of anti-Blackness, who are acting out those behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. And so hopefully that kind of gives you some context as to why these things are happening, right? Like why are Black girls being pushed out? Because we're acting out of anti-Blackness behaviors and attitudes. And so no matter how much we say or believe that we are anti-racist, right? We're acting in these beliefs, and there have to be active actions to kind of change those mindsets that we have. And so as an educator in Memphis, I did experience the school to prison pipeline in regard to my students. And so thinking about that example, right? I am a Black woman, but still have behaviors and attitudes of anti-Blackness. The administrators in my school, people who are there in support of kids, all have these attitudes of anti-Blackness. And so one particular day in my second year of teaching, sorry, I have a dog and they're, hold on just a moment. My apologies. So when things are going on in a school building, and I'm sure the other educators who are on the call can attest to this, when there's something happening, the energy in the building shifts. And so this particular day, I felt the energy in the building shift, right? There was kind of like a chaotic, intense energy at the end of the day, rather than like a calming kind of dismissal, kids are exiting for the weekend kind of energy. And so as a leader in the building, we had a chat of like all of the leaders, and I just saw the notifications on my phone like just going off. And by the time we walked outside for dismissal, I had like 100 notifications from this one group chat. And so we go out for dismissal and we're standing on the sidewalks in the car rider line. And the way that our school building is set up, we kind of have like two patios. So there's a patio for high schoolers and there's a patio for middle schoolers to stand and dismiss. And so parked on the high school patio were two police cars. And so that wasn't a unnormal, that was a common occurrence at my school to see police cars. And so not necessarily thinking anything differently, thinking that, you know, maybe something had happened on the high school side, maybe something had happened on the middle school side, seeing about the energy that I felt and the notifications on my phone. And so the car rider line is going as usual. I'm telling kids goodbye, see you on Monday. And one of my co-teachers brings my attention to the top of the patio. And at the top of the patio, I see a fifth grader, two police officers, and our principal. And when I look, I see the child, she's holding her zip-up binder in her hands, and her hands are handcuffed. And the principal kind of looks around and notices that everyone's staring at this imagery. And so she runs inside and she grabs like a jacket or a piece of cloth or something, and she covers the handcuffs so that they're not visible. But at that point, it was kind of too late, right? Because everyone had seen, and there was an audible kind of hush that went over the schoolyard. Because as you can imagine, at dismissal, kids are excited. It was a weekend, they're ready to go home, but there was an audible hush that went over. And so the child and the police officers, one on either side of her, walk down to the police car, and they put her in the back of the police car, get in the car, and drive away. And so you can imagine the kids are shocked. The teachers are shocked. what is going on in the situation. And you can imagine the conversations that had to be had. There were tears in my eyes. Some other kids were crying, and we're trying to all make sense of what could have possibly happened on the 5th grade hallway that would have caused this child, this 5th grader, to be arrested. And later coming to find out that the child was kind of being destructive in a classroom, and she really just could not get a hold of herself to kind of calm down and go home. So the principal, not out of her own volition, but there are certain state laws, right, that if a child is acting in a certain way, then these are the steps that have to be followed. And so the child was arrested, and we didn't see her again. I think that she transferred schools, but I know that she wasn't like kept in jail, but I think she transferred schools from the embarrassment of what had happened to her in terms of being let out of the school by police. The other example that I want to share with you, and I will drop this in the chat. If you're in Tennessee, you may have heard about this, but in October of this year, ProPublica, which is an investigative journalism company, released a report out of Rutherford County. And this is, and so what happened, the report is, or the article chronicles an incident where elementary school kids, 6 or 7 of them, none of them older than 8 years old, were arrested for a crime that did not exist. For observing a fight, and they were arrested from school, taken to a jail. And so it's a really interesting read to, again, bring it back to, it's an interesting read, a heart-wrenching read, to bring it back to the beginning of this. There were so many people in this article that knew what they were doing was not right. Arresting kids, taking kids to jail was not right, but we're continuing to act in an anti-Black way and uphold the system of the school to prison pipeline. And so if there was a charge that I would give you, it would be your charge is to illuminate this for other people, right? Your charge is to wake people up to the fact that they're breathing in, they're drinking in, they're operating in this water of anti-Blackness. And what are the actions that we need to do to be able to stop or to kind of change our trajectory. And so I would encourage you to take a look at the article. Probably spend it's a long article, probably a 15 to 20 minute read, but that's something that's happening in Tennessee, but is, again, just another resource for you to be able to continue to understand how these things are systematic, but how individual people are choosing to uphold these systems, and how if we want to change these systems, it's going to come to individual people making different decisions. So thank you for allowing me to be in the space with you. And I hope that you were able to get something out of my particular testimony. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mackenzie, for those words, for that teaching, for the sharing of your experiences, as well as your expertise in policy. Blessings on your ongoing work and your study. Very grateful for you. We are going to continue as we think about leading into that reason side, data and facts and context. I'm going to share a little bit nationally, and then we're going to continue with some local information. So nationally, I think it's important for us to note that the context in which we're having this conversation is one of a crisis of mass incarceration, right? Here in the United States, we have about 2.3 million people who are locked up in immigration detention, in juvenile justice facilities, in prisons and jails. 2.3 million people. We are a global leader in this, and this is a bad area to be leading in. And I also want us to notice that this is something that has been happening recently. I'm 37 years old, and this is essentially over the period of my lifetime, right? There has been a 500% increase in incarceration in the United States over the past 4 decades. So we see this enormous spike. And that's important for us to understand as just a baseline context for some of the things that Mackenzie was describing and that Alice was referencing from Push Out. So we also need to know that this is not making us safer, right? Long stays in institutional settings like youth prisons do not actually reduce the chance that a young person will reoffend. In fact, we found just the opposite. The Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention found that long-term juvenile incarceration does not decrease reoffending and may actually increase recidivism rates, right? Increase repeat offenses for lower level youth offenders. In other words, we're doing something that does not help and does cause harm. So these are just baseline information that we want to have. Now, just as we heard earlier, this is not contained to a separate space called the criminal justice or juvenile justice system. This is bleeding over into our educational system as well. So we see an enormous rise in school-based policing. So currently about 1.7 million students nationally across the United States attend schools that have a police officer available on campus, but no counselor available on campus. So we are setting students up for a context of criminalization rather than support. Within this, unsurprisingly, we see enormous racial disparities. We see the prevalence of that anti-Blackness that Mackenzie was citing. That is, as she noted, literally the water in which we are swimming. And we see that when we look at the statistics. You'll hear more about how these play out locally, but let me just note nationally, coming from the Office of Civil Rights of the US Department of Education, that Black students are about 15% of school enrollment, but 28.7% of students who are referred to law enforcement and 31.6% of students who are arrested at schools, right? We also see Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander students and Native American Alaska Native students are also disproportionately targeted beyond their representation and enrollment. And also Latinx students are more likely to be targeted than white students as well. So we see these really significant racial disparities, this criminalization of communities of color impacting young people. Now, this is not just at the level of the most serious kind of discipline and criminalization, right? Arrests and referrals to law enforcement. This is also a bias that is appearing in lesser discipline levels as well. So we see these disparities also appearing around students being suspended out of school and students being expelled, right? So Black students, about 15% of enrollment, but 38% of students who are suspended out of school, 33 to 39% of students expelled. To use theological terms, we are affording to white students grace, and we are affording just the opposite to Black students. This is also intersectional, which is important to know. So we want to think about how does this connect also with gender, also with disability status. So we see that Black girl students, subject of push out, are 7.4% of enrollment, but 13.3% of students suspended out of school. The disparity between white girls and Black girls is actually even greater than the disparity between Black boys and white boys. And then Black students with disabilities are at an intersectional point of being especially targeted. So although about 2.3% of enrollment, Black students with disabilities, as defined as being served under IDEA, are about 8.8% of students who are suspended out of school. Right? So this is some of our national context. And I have a special heart for this because I worked my way through college as an assistant in two different early childhood education settings, one very wealthy and predominantly white children, one serving children through Head Start, predominantly children of color in a church basement. And you could see disparities from how we interact with 3- and 4-year-olds and the resources available to them. And when we look at national statistics, we see that this targeting, this criminalizing of children is impacting even the youngest children. So Black preschool students, about 18% of preschool enrollment, but 38.2% of students who are expelled. We're talking about babies here. We're talking about little ones, right? Preschool students. And part of why I'm talking about suspensions, and expulsions from individual schools, as well as arrests and law enforcement referrals, is because this is all part of a continuum. The American Academy of Pediatrics, right, our friends, the doctors, note that the effects of out-of-school suspension and expulsion on a student really can be profound. So if you experience that suspension out of school or expulsion from one school, you're as much 10 times more likely to ultimately drop out of high school than students who don't have those experiences, but are otherwise similar. So it's important to pay attention to this whole array of discipline disparities. Just a brief note, this is important as we think about moving policymakers who are sometimes moved by money numbers. These high school suspensions are estimated to cost about $35 billion per year. Now, if you spent time in education, like many of us have, you think that makes no sense. It's free. You send a kid home. Doesn't cost anything at all. And that's penny wise, but pound foolish, to pull a phrase from my childhood, because while cheap in the short term, it's actually very expensive in the long term because of that increased likelihood of dropping out that our friends, the pediatricians, noted. And then the cost to society in lost tax revenue, in worsened health, in increased likelihood of incarceration, and more over the child's lifetime. So we're going to turn in just a moment to Jamie, who's going to share some context around Knox County schools. But I want to just flag for you that if this has piqued your interest and you wonder about your school district or your local school, I'll drop this link in the chat. There's a wonderful tool offered through the Office of Civil Rights of the Department of Education where you can look up your school or your district. And you can see these numbers. You can see the disparities in discipline. You can see law enforcement referrals. You can see how many school-based police are in place. You can see disparities in access to advanced courses, and so on. So this is a wonderful tool I'll put in the chat in case you're interested in doing more of that local deep dive into where you are, because I know we're coming from many different schools and districts. And finally, just a note to say that there are many, many contributing factors. We're going to go into this more as we continue through our morning, but there are a lot of contributing factors. The school-based policing, increased school-based policing, and absent and unfunded alternatives, zero tolerance policies, implicit and explicit bias, including the anti-Blackness that Mackenzie named, adultification, which specifically impacts Black girls, and so much more. And also that excessive disparate use of suspensions and expulsions, all of which are under a context of mass incarceration and criminalization of communities of color. And undergirding all of which, as women of faith, as women of the Bible, we recognize and see the bigger picture underneath all of that, structural racism, what John Wesley, we're using the Wesleyan framework, would have called social sin, and what the book of Ephesians defines as powers and principalities. So I'm going to turn over, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment and turn over to Jamie, who's going to walk us through some local and county data. So we have that information, and we will share this this information that's going to come up on the screen later with you if you have trouble seeing all the individual font. But turn it over to Jamie now.
Hi, thanks so much. If you'll queue up my slides, Emily, I want to go through some slides very quickly. There's a lot of information here. I'm putting the link to where I got this information from the Knox County schools in the chat. And I want to let you know that back in 2014, the Knox County schools started a disparities in economic outcomes task force to find out if there were disparities in Knox County. And once you go to the next slide, one of the things they wanted to know is who goes to Knox County schools. Only about 15% of the students are African American, 5% Latino. Very few administrators are Latino, the majority, and very few teachers are either African American or Latino. We're a white school system here in Knoxville. So who is being suspended in this predominantly white school system, even though the African American population was only 15%, from 2012 to 2015, twice. So Emily showed you the national rates. Knox County was worse. So we were suspending children who were African American at twice the rate as white children. So if you go to the next slide, the other thing that I think was eye-opening about Knoxville and Knox County schools is about half the children who go to Knox County schools are economically disadvantaged. And this is of all races. So just know that a lot of this is, a lot of behaviors are driven by economic disadvantage and not race. So please understand that the percentage of students who are suspended is disproportionately high for economically disadvantaged children. So the next slide is, what did Knox County schools decide to do with this data? So what they decided to do is remove suspension as kind of the first option and try and do positive behavior intervention and support, as well as restorative practices. They also wanted to make sure that they accommodated students who had recent trauma. And I think this is critical. It's my experience that children do not, I mean, I'm not a teacher. We have many teachers on the line. It's my experience that students do not act out because they've had a wonderful day. Usually there's something underlying that. So if we go, we'll hop forward to 2018, where they look to see if their interventions had any kind of positive response. So the number is wonderful from 2016 to 17. And each line here, the gray line is the high school, in the middle is the high school suspensions, and they are going down every year. Blue line is the most recent year that the school year 2018. Elementary school suspensions also went down, but the big problem was in the high school and the middle schools, and the middle school suspensions went way down. So it just took a change in policy and the system of discipline that Knox County Schools was doing to make a huge impact. So this was, before we go to the next slide, this was undertaken because the observation that there was a disproportionate amount of school suspensions for African-American kids. But let me tell you, all children benefited in the school system. Let's move to the next slide. Look at these numbers, the difference between the numbers of children that sat in in-school suspension across the board. And several of these, are acronyms that they use in the school system in terms of English language learners is that ELL, students with disabilities is that SWD, economically disadvantaged students. I mean, look at the whopping 2,200 less in-school suspensions for economically disadvantaged students once they put new policies into place. All right, now some disheartening information. One of the things that happens when the Knox County starts to collect this data is they start having public forums and they ask for community feedback, which I encourage anyone who hears about any community feedback session to go right away and listen. And if you feel compelled, give feedback. One of the feedback pieces from the 2014 sessions was that police officers should not arrest students on school property, period. Okay, so that was in 2014. There was a negotiation and the police agreed not to arrest elementary school students only. They still wanted the power to arrest middle school and high school students on school property. Okay, so the arrests you don't see being diminished as much as you would like over those same 3 years. So arrests are still being used as a tool for discipline and disproportionately to the population of people in the schools. So in 2021, there was a community meeting to follow up on all this information and give an update from 2018. Unfortunately, right before this community meeting, a young man, someone's child, Anthony Thompson Jr., was shot at Austin East High School by police. He had brought a gun to school and was in the bathroom hiding out, and the police went into the bathroom, and there was a officer shooting, and as well as Anthony Thompson Jr. lost his life. So of course, the disparities committee was overrun by activists who really wanted an immediate answer in the shooting last year. So just, for your information, Knox County is still, and the Knox County Police Department, as well as the city police department, we still are demanding answers in terms of this school shooting, as well as some other events in Knox County. So the last slide, just last week, 2 weeks ago, an African-American activist was walking in the hallway. He was providing feedback at one of the public meetings for the Knoxville Police Department to talk about better law enforcement and to improve the system. And he was very publicly arrested and mistreated once in custody. It was caught on camera, and it was incredibly disheartening. So the job of the activist is definitely to criticize situations that are unfair and to seek justice. Our job is definitely to attend meetings and ask questions and ask for data to be collected. And it's not good for anyone if someone is arrested as a result of their criticism. I would submit to you that that's not the United States of America. So not to end on a down note, I do want to leave you with, it was very heartening to see that once Knox County schools exposed the data for their disciplinary activities, that the system got better, and the system got better for all students. So I think that there is a way through seeking data to improve our systems. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the local data, and definitely, Emily, to look up your school system in the Department of Education database. I do think data provides power.
Thank you, Jamie, very much for that local context. We'll also be hearing more about local data in Hamilton County in a little bit when we hear from Donna Palmer. But I do, as we're moving around our quadrilateral, I do just want to share a few words about history and about context, because I think that's very, very important. So as we talk about the school to prison pipeline, we need to acknowledge that this is part of a deep and troubling racial justice history that goes back centuries. Right? Cultural and racial bias in educational policy harming children. This is not a new conversation. In the 1860s, the federal government enacted laws making it illegal for Native American students to be taught in their own language, part of a practice of cultural genocide against Native children. The wonderful Michelle Alexander, author of The New Jim Crow and speaker at our last assembly, teaches that we need to understand our current criminal justice policies and practices in view of the long history of racism in America. She writes, in the era of colorblindness, it is no longer socially permissible to use race explicitly as a justification for discrimination, exclusion, and social contempt. So we don't. Rather than rely on race, we use our criminal justice system to label people of color criminals and then engage in all the practices we supposedly left behind. We have not ended racial caste in America. We have merely redesigned it. Friends, this history is deep, and this history is about more than just policies, though those do matter. It is a soul level sickness. Right? Structural racism is a soul level sickness, what Ephesians teaches us to understand as powers and principalities. And so, ladies, for this work, we must indeed, to use that language of scripture, put on the full armor of God. And when we do this work, we do not do it alone. For even as there are many horror stories in our racial justice history, so too there is a rich and powerful legacy of lay women in our tradition fighting for racial justice. lay women in the United Methodist tradition like Jessie Daniel Ames, a white Southerner who stood up against lynching nearly a century ago, helping to co-lead a movement. A rich legacy of working for educational equity, racial and educational equity, for it was our foremothers, United Methodist Women, who commissioned the extraordinary Polly Murray, Reverend Dr. Polly Murray, to write the state's laws on race and color, a pamphlet that became a tome that provided vital evidence in Brown versus Board of Education. United Methodist Women, we have long been about the work of claiming justice for ourselves and our children. But indeed, this story goes back far more than our 152 years. For biblical women have led the way. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to our team, Karen, Pat, and Cindy, who will be leading our participatory Bible study this morning on that theme of biblical women claiming justice for ourselves and our children.
I am Pat Bellingrath, the Spiritual Growth Coordinator for Holston Conference, and we want to welcome you to this portion of our gathering today, and we'll begin our Bible study with prayer. So let us pray. God of love and light, hope and justice, as we prepare to engage in a time of study, open our eyes to new ways of interpreting and relating to this parable we are about to discuss. Help us to be more like the widow, in that we will continue to lift our voices and help others raise theirs whenever and wherever we see injustices. Give us strength and courage to know what is right, and give us persistence, and yes, Lord, sometimes even defiance, in order to bring wholeness and healing to all your children. For until we are all healed, our work must continue so that we can all be filled with God's love and grace. When we do it right, Lord, we are bearing Christ's example in mind. Let us not be bystanders to injustice or prejudice. Turn our pain into passion. As United Methodist Women, we ask for grace to know, courage to act, mercy to share, and justice to proclaim. In the name of the one who loves us most, amen. So let me see. Okay, we will be looking at the parable of the persistent widow and the unjust judge, which is from Luke 18, verses 1 through 8 today, in relationship to recent and current events. The parables of Jesus invite us into engagement and encourage us to study the different ways we can apply them to our own lives. For example, we tend to think of widows as perhaps elderly women, but they can be a variety of ages, classes, and backgrounds. Think about all those who have lost sons and partners to violence and have had to navigate, who have had to be persistent in order to be heard and seen, a broken criminal justice system in order to obtain justice for their loved ones. As you listen to the parable in a few minutes, consider if this would be a judge before which you would like to hear a case. If we look around us, we will see human beings who are drowning in systemic injustice. We ask you to think about our broken legal and criminal justice systems, our unequal educational system, and our other systems of inequity and injustice. Think about some of the women you know who have had to be persistent in the face of injustices, and remember that we must have faith in the power of persistence. We must never lose hope. We must never lose heart, and we must always, always pray. Here are a few women who came to mind who have persisted, but there are so many more. Fannie Lou Hamer, Maybe Till Mobley, Erin Brockovich, Harriet Tubman, Ida B. Wells, Clara Lemick, Nellie Bly, Maria Tallchief, Claudette Colvin, Ruby Bridges, Wanda Cooper Jones, mother of Ahmaud Arbery, Sabrina Fulton, mother of Trayvon Martin. Excuse me, and I said there are so many more. As Karen reads the parable to you now, think of examples where someone like the persistent widow, continues to pursue justice in the face of sometimes insurmountable obstacles, or a time when you have had to be persistent in order to seek justice. And now I'll turn it over to Karen.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Karen Adair, and I am currently president of the Scenic South District. And as we read, as you listen, hear the words, we know that the Bible has powerful and meaningful stories and parables, but sometimes we need to see it and hear it for it to really sink in. So as we dive into these stories, when you dive more deeper, you can begin to apply the words to our own lives and to events and situations in our world today. Think about, as you hear the words of the parable, think about when and where you have encountered a broken justice system, and ask participants, and think about this story in light of what has been shared. So now I'll read the persistent widow, which is Luke 18, 1 through 8. And here's the parable. Then Jesus told them a parable about their need to pray always and not to lose heart. He said, in a certain city, there was a judge to who neither feared God nor had respect for people. In that city, there was a widow who kept coming to him and saying, grant me justice against my opponent. For a while he refused, but later he said to himself, though I have no fear of God and no respect for anyone, yet because this widow keeps bothering me, I will grant her justice so that she may not wear me out by continually coming. And the Lord said, listen to what the unjust judge says. And will not God grant justice to his chosen ones who cry to him day and night? Will he delay long in helping them? I tell you, he will quickly grant justice to them. And yet, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? Now I'm going to turn it over to Cindy to talk about the breakout session.
Good morning. I'm Cindy Campbell. I'm a deaconess in the United Methodist Church, recently moved to the Holston Conference. We are going to move into breakout rooms in just a few moments, and I'm going to ask you to consider some questions. I'm going to read them out to you, and you will be able to think about those. You might want to write these down. How would you feel as the persistent widow? How would you feel if a persistent widow were one of your friends? And I see there are other questions also to consider on our screen. How would you feel if the persistent widow were one of your close friends or neighbors? How would you feel if this woman was unknown to you, but still someone you read in the news? So our questions on the screen also are, who are the widows of this day? How do they fare in our justice system? Are we doing better, worse, or the same? What gives you the strength to persevere in the face of failure? How does the widow finally get the justice she deserves? What lessons does this teach us about organizing in contexts where decision makers are not sensitive to the moral call of justice? You may not get to all of the questions, but they are certainly questions to continue to ponder on after we leave this session. And I think we're now going into our breakout session.
Hello, everyone. Let's see, we're not doing this one by district, are we? I'm sorry, that's the wrong screen. I wanted you to know that when we do go to this breakout, you're going to see several numbered rooms. We're trying to get only 6 people in each room. So if you arrive at a room where the participant number is more than 6, please choose a different room. And the 3 church groups that we have, you all have a group with the name with your church on it. So you'll want to find that group to have your discussion in. Okay? And I'm going to start the breakouts now.
Donna H., it looks like folks are having trouble with the breakout groups. I see folks still in this main group. So let me know if you want me to assist with the breakout rooms and send people to groups on my end, or if you have that on your end.
Yeah, I don't see anybody going to the rooms. So
Yeah. Would you like me?
Let's
I
see.
can recreate rooms and just send people if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we keep the church groups. Can
Yeah.
you see those in there?
Hold on one
There's
second.
3 church groups we need to have.
Okay, hold on one second. I'm just going to close rooms and I'll restart room. If you are in that church group, I'm going to ask you just to leave and stay in your in-person space.
Can you repost the questions for the Zoom? Our Zoom projector is frozen on Cindy Campbell. And we can just, if the questions are up, we can leave them on our projector here.
I'll put that up one more time.
Okay, I'm gonna send you in. I'm gonna recreate breakout rooms and send you into small rooms. You'll be in them for about 12 minutes.
And it does look like we still have rooms for oh, we don't have the church rooms. Okay. Emily, have you ever tried to use that let people assign themselves option? That was the first time I tried to do that.
Yeah, I think people were having challenges with it because it wasn't showing the join breakout group a list. So I wonder for our next breakout rooms, maybe we can private message Donna M what she wants to do. If she wants us to have people have the join option labeled by district, or do you know what district people are in? Because maybe we can just pre-assign and send, since people seem to have trouble joining in.
I don't have, because people are signing in with random names and things, it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah. I had the same thing as I was trying to pull out the church groups, but I was like, wait a minute, I don't know which one of this is a church group. So, yeah. Okay, well, maybe I'll message. Maybe we can.
It's weird because I have a monitor on my, I've connected by my iPhone, and now the join breakout room button is showing, but it didn't earlier.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's see.
Maybe we just need to recreate it again, and the district screen is what was important. We wanted people to go by the 9 different district numbers.
Yeah, so it might be helpful if we just label the names of the groups with the districts, so that people aren't trying to find their right number. So if we just rename to the, I'm not in Holston, I'm sorry, I think it's the 8, 9. How many districts do you have?
Yeah, I tried to do that while I was practicing with this yesterday to try to rename while the session was going on, and I wasn't able to do that.
Okay.
And I thought it'd be faster to just list the numbers for them, and then they could just go to their room number.
Yeah, I think people had some challenges with that based on this this round. But let's ask Donna and say, we're having this challenge. Should we try again, or do you want us to just send people into mixed small groups instead of district small groups, and see what she would prefer? Because she's doing that group, that breakout group.
I see we've got a Green Meadow group. Oh, they're in a room.
Yeah, I pulled them. Yeah.
They're grayed out though.
I think they're here in the main session with us. Same with Averna and 466378.
Well, they're just listening to us then.
Yeah. I think there are some that were church groups, so that we want to keep they're just having their own internal conversation without being in a Zoom meeting.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
Your brother, then we would be, I don't even know if we would have to have this conversation, but I think that we just don't know so much, and we are in
Welcome back from breakout rooms. Turn it back over to the Bible study team in case they want to close us out.
Yes, we'd like to just encourage you to continue the conversation with your groups back home and to continue to illuminate using the words from one of our other speakers to continue to illuminate others to this issue, because it's a very big issue and it's not one we're going to solve in one day. But let us go to God in prayer and close out this session, this part of our session. Creator God of all, help us to consider our next faithful steps to bring justice to those who have been treated unjustly in the education system. Help us to be the persistent widows in our communities, to right the wrongs, illuminate the issues to those that we come in contact with. And we ask for your guidance in your holy name, God. Amen.
Amen. Thank you for that grounding in scripture and reflection as we continue the work. We are going to transition now into more conversation about action, action discussion. How do we put love in action and where do we go from here? But I'm going to invite you just to take 30, 60 seconds and do a little bit of a stretch, because we've been sitting down for a long time. So take a moment and reach up and over, whatever is comfortable for you. I know our bodies are different. Maybe you need to wiggle your shoulders a little bit. Maybe you even need to stand up. If you do, and if that's comfortable, feel free. Just take a little moment to move your body so you can be fully present for our next 40 minutes or so together. So just get in whatever stretch you need before we go into more action conversation. Mm-hmm. And we take a breath, grateful for the breath of God that continues to breathe life into us. And with that, I'm going to invite Donna P. From the Chattanooga area, who's going to share a bit about the local context there and some powerful work happening locally with Caleb and around restorative practices.
Hi, I'm Donna Palmer. I'm a member of First St. Mary United Methodist Church here in Chattanooga. And I, for a while, was president of the unit. And during that time, we joined an organization, a nonprofit called Caleb. That's Chattanoogans in Action for Love, Equality, and Benevolence. And if you'll see the first slide here, you'll see how their organization parallels in so many ways the aims of United Methodist Women. The three areas that they focus on are economic mobility, education reform, and criminal justice reform. The organization started out focusing mostly on criminal justice. And for about 2 years now, we've had a community bail fund that is funded through grants and donations. And it is remarkably successful in bailing people who do not have the money for bail. Now, obviously, there's some limits on what they're able to do and should do. They do not deal with violent acts. They do not deal with criminal behaviors of a high order. But there are so many people who are in jail for days, even weeks, without any kind of hearing. And this allows for people who qualify to be bailed out, and then they refund the money to the system. And it's a revolving account. This has been very successful. There's also the economic mobility group, and they have worked mostly in the area of affordable housing and fair housing practices. That group has worked toward becoming part of the system that makes decisions, and has placed several people on boards. They've lobbied with local political leaders and community leaders. They, again, have been very successful. Now, I am part of the education reform group. We have started our work a little bit later, and we started out looking at what we needed to do in the local school system, that's Hamilton County Schools. And I'll show you on the next slide the data that we were dealing with. This is just a small fraction of what we actually saw, but let's look at the next slide. Now, this says the most recently available data. That's the data we had when we started working. This mirrors so well what we've already heard about in Knox County and nationally. Our Black students were punished at a much higher rate, almost 3 times as likely to be suspended or expelled than white students. I don't show these numbers on this slide, but we also looked at children in poverty. We looked at children with disabilities, and the same patterns were evident. It's just a microcosm of the things that you've already heard about from other people. So we decided over a period of about 6 months to really research what was working, what could be an effective way of dealing with these issues, and an attempt to break the school to prison pipeline. We settled on restorative practices. And as we started looking at that whole arena, we realized that it's been around, it's been used in some large school systems, and we were able to see through their research that it had been successful in reducing suspensions and expulsions. One thing I have not heard in the presentation so far is why we worry about suspensions. And here's the data. I may not have it exactly right, but any student who has been suspended 3 or more times in the course of his or her school career is much more likely to drop out. And we know that when a student drops out, they are much more likely to end up involved with juvenile justice. That also increases their chances of being involved with adult justice systems. So there's almost a direct correlation between the number of suspensions, dropout, and then imprisonment. So that's really just putting it in kind of a linear way, what the school to prison pipeline is talking about. So anyway, we started out looking at how to raise money. We looked at where we could find partners, and we looked at where we could find expertise. And we ended up partnering with International Institutes for Restorative Practices. They're a very well-known training group. And we, over time, we also built a partnership with 2 universities here in Chattanooga, Southern Adventist and then University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. And what we're doing, and this is underway now, we're in the first year of a pilot program at Orchard Knob Elementary, which is a medium-sized elementary school in the heart of Chattanooga. It's predominantly Black, and we have been able this year to do a whole school training. That means that we've trained all the school staff and faculty, administration in restorative practices. We actually have a teacher in the building who is a trainer. That just happened. It was not planned that way, but that's a real advantage to us. The thing that I think is so hopeful is that at the same time as we were doing our planning, Hamilton County Schools were under the gun from the state because of their overrepresentation of Black students being suspended. So probably at about the same time as we were working, parallel to that, the equity office in Hamilton County Schools began to develop an equity plan. And we have just now seen that plan. And it's just amazing to me that throughout their plan, they mention restorative practices. So we're feeling very hopeful. Our next step actually is a meeting with the equity officer. And she has been very positive with us so far about partnering. So we're looking at just this coming year, perhaps expanding to at least one other school. We're looking at influencing through reaching out to school board and administrators to actually seeing the county take responsibility for hiring more people to support restorative practices. And I mean, this is just remarkable to me because the education reform group is not a huge group of people, but we're all very dedicated. And when I really believe that within the next couple of years, the school system will have, as part of its policy, a revised behavioral, I've forgotten what it's called now, but it's their code of conduct, which is their behavior policy. I think that they will have revised that so that it reflects and is embedded with restorative practice. I say that because I want you to hear that you really can make a difference. think the last slide I have shows some contact information that you might want to have. Yeah, there's the Caleb link and a link to our church group, and you can ask for me if you have specific questions, and I'll be glad to set up a contact with you.
Thank you so much, Donna, for sharing that. Thank you for inspiring ways that we can get active and opportunities to connect and really put love in action. I'd invite others to share in the chat as well, names of organizations that you are working with that are working to interrupt the school to prison pipeline. We heard about some of the work happening in Knox County, some of the work happening with Caleb, but if there are other organizations, please lift those up. And of course, a reminder about the powerful work that Bennett College is doing, a focus of our mission moment today. I am also going to flag one more way that you can take action. This is an accessible action that we can all take together in real time remotely. So I'm going to share my screen. And you are going to see an invitation to take action for House Resolution 2248, the Ending Pushout Act. This is a federal opportunity to act, to join with other United Methodist Women. More than 1,000 United Methodist Women members and friends have already contacted their representative in support of this bill, and you can join them by clicking that link that is in your chat. This is a real-time opportunity. The Ending Pushout Act would, if it passed, do the following. It would create a $2.5 billion fund to incentivize schools and states to abandon unfair and discriminatory disciplinary policies and practices that push children of color out of the classroom. It would also strengthen civil rights monitoring and enforcement, and it would establish a task force to address school pushout with particular attention to the needs of girls of color. If the bill were to pass, participating states and schools who applied to participate and access these funds would be supported to invest in restorative practices, like some of what we just heard about. Restorative practices, trauma-informed care, counselors, social workers, mental health professionals, it's kind of wraparound supports that help children thrive, and police funds could not be used for police in schools. The funds would be for these transformative, restorative, supportive interventions. While this bill is certainly not a one and done fix, we need to work diligently at that local level and state level. It would be a substantial step forward in the ongoing work of interrupting the school to prison pipeline and ending school pushout. And you can support it right now in real time by just clicking on that link. And it'll take you to a page that looks like this, where you can share your information, which will populate your representative, and then you can edit the letter. There's sort of a template letter there, but you can edit it to share your own data, your own stories, your own biblical commitments, thinking about some of the discussion that just came forward. So that's an advocacy opportunity that you can take right now in real time. But I'm going to stop sharing because we're going to hear now. I'm going to turn it over to your wonderful president, President Donna Mosby, who's going to highlight the possibility of some work that you can be doing together here in Holston Conference, and introduce a time for discussion around action. And that is what is coming next. So I turn it over to President Donna.
And thank you, Emily, for your work and for your encouragement of us here in Holston Conference. So I am excited, and I want to take us back to the very beginning of what is the school to prison pipeline. That is for us the question that we need to have on our hearts to continually to define what that means, the school to prison pipeline. So that's the focus for us for this year, for this time right here today. And then the second focus for us is, what do we do to dismantle it? And this is a large topic. It involves a whole lot, but if we chop it up into the pieces that make sense to us and make sense in our community, I think we will do right. What the ultimate goal is to keep children in school and out of the criminal justice system. Keep children in school and out of the criminal justice system. So we are going to divide up and go back into groups. Donna H. will give us our directions for doing that. But I want to share with you some possibilities of what we can do as a Holston conference. There are lots of opportunities for us to do things when we come in your breakout group. You're going to talk with your group or by district, what you think can be done in your district. And then we'll bring that back together and take the next couple of months to formulate a plan of what we can do in Holston Conference. I envision us being on the steps of the Capitol and taking action from a legislative standpoint. We do not have bills introduced right now that address this issue specifically in Tennessee, but I envision us making sure that bills are created and that we support those. So we don't want to take the back seat on waiting on something to happen. We can be proactive and engaged because we know our children are affected and how they're being affected and what happens in the future. So we will break off into those groups when we come back. I have some ideas to share about possible plans that we can do across the conference to build relationships and to do this work. So Donna, if you would, and Emily, if you would get us into our groups. The questions for you is, what can we do to dismantle the school to prison pipeline in our particular communities? Mm-hmm.
All right, and everybody, I was able to set up the district rooms for you, and hopefully we won't have any trouble with you choosing your district room once we open the breakout. So go ahead and hit the button to join the breakout rooms, and once you see it pop up on your screen, and choose by district. And it looks like it's working. Yay.
And if there is someone who's in a district by themselves, Donna, will you know that? And then you can maybe put them in a adjoining?
Yeah, we can see how many are in each room.
Okay.
If anyone is having trouble using that feature, please just write in the chat and tell me what district you're in, and I can assign you on the back end.
I'll look for those too, see if I can help you keep up. Tennessee Valley.
Janice Rowland, Three Rivers District.
Johnny Bridges, Tennessee Valley.
Jane Hudson, Tennessee Valley. Joanne Peters, Three Rivers District.
Doris Dexter, Appalachian.
Susan Keener, Tennessee Valley.
And I do see that we have some folks who are from outside of the conference. It's wonderful to have you here. We don't have a district group for you, but wonderful to have you here, and just want to note that.
Still moving, folks. Oh, what happened to the Smoky Mountain? Oh, Smoky Mountain is getting filled up. Let's see. Huh.
I know we have several folks who are here from other conferences. Again, a joy to have you. Encourage you to take this time to reflect for yourself. How will you bring this back to the conference that you are in, to your own ministry? Some folks are guests to United Methodist Women. Really glad to have you. So use this time for reflection in your context. And if there's anyone in this group still who is a member of a district and Holston conference but hasn't been able to get assigned, please do note that in the chat. My apologies, Donna H. and I are trying to add people quickly, but if I have overlooked you, I do apologize, and please just re-note that.
And Emily, I think that our guests from other conferences are asking to be assigned to a group, so they can share in a group. Can you see who those are? Mm-hmm.
I've moved some of them into the groups that don't have very many people.
Okay, great, thank you.
But I'm having trouble adding people. It's like there's a limit. I was trying to move someone to Smoky Mountain.
Johnny Bridges and Regina McDuffie will go to Tennessee Valley.
Okay.
And I see Miss Broyles, Miss Garland, someone from Green Meadow, Miss McIntosh. If you do, tell me where you are, or Donna, if you know, I'm happy to keep assigning. I apologize, I have ignorance. I don't know which district.
Yeah, I don't know either, unfortunately.
Is Appalachian.
Who's that?
Carol Garland.
Carol Garland, which one did you say? Appalachian?
Yes.
Oh, she's there.
And Foy, did you say Appalachian as well?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Uh-huh. Linus Boyle, I believe, is New Rivers. Okay. Three Rivers.
Whoops. Okay.
And I just want to note, I think that Cynthia Mishtal is in Hiawassee by herself. So if there's anyone else from Hiawassee that could join her, that would be great.
I tried adding some people. They must have dropped off.
Cynthia, if she's in a group by herself, she is close to Scenic South. Is it possible for her to join Scenic South?
Tried that. I put her there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Gillian Wolf, Neil Reeves, Diane.
Diane, could you put her in Tennessee Valley?
And I do note that a couple of these folks are not, there aren't images here, so they might have needed to step away for a personal.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, it looks like we got most everybody in now.
And I'm not sure with Neil.
Green Meadows.
This might. Neil, would you like to move to a group? What
was your question?
Would you like to move to a small group?
Sure, if that's possible.
Okay.
I'm a student at Lancaster Theological Seminary,
mm-hmm.
and be graduating in May, and my post-seminary work will be mass incarceration, so that's why I'm here.
Absolutely wonderful. Welcome. Thank you so much. Can we move you to Donna, maybe one of the smaller groups?
Yeah, got him there. Okay.
Thank you, Neil.
Great to have people from other places.
Mm-hmm.
And where does Mackenzie want to go?
I asked her if she wanted to go to Tennessee Valley. I think that would be good. Or.
All right.
And just noting, we have about 3 minutes until the breakout groups close. And then
this one was going to be 15 minutes, I thought, but oh well.
I'm just looking at the counter in the corner.
Yeah.
But 3 minutes actually is good with our timing because we need to wrap by noon.
Right. Okay.
So 3 minutes will let us, Donna, come back and do whatever you would like to do. And then if you just ask me, I'll just do our closing prayer, closing litany.
Okay. I have been so impressed by the program. Thank you. A topic that we can talk on and on about.
Yeah, it's a real gift. You seem to have many different leaders who are engaged in this work from different angles and different areas of expertise. So hopefully that can mobilize into a long-term fruit.
It help. That's what we're hoping for. And I will be interested to hear what comes back from the group. And so we will need to put that in the chat. And after we close, if people still continue to put it in the chat, we will have it that maybe we can put in a newsletter or send out some of the comments.
Donna H.
Running.
Donna H, are you able to save the chat and then share it with us afterwards?
Yeah. I'll leave it open. Let me know how long you want to leave it open for the chat comments.
I'm definitely going to have to follow up with Neil. So Neil and Sandra are surprises to me, but Tracy, we talked, and she's a deaconess. She works with children in the alternative program, so they're pushed out to her, and I'm sure she would have things to say to the group.
Right. Yeah, hopefully this can be, you can take the emails from registration and follow up with people and gather some working committee. So it's not just, the district SACs and Brittany, but a team in the long haul.
Yes. Very excited. but I did do the research to find out what's going on in our legislature. So,
Rooms are closing.
and welcome back. Okay, and as we're coming back, we will continue. I know that wasn't long. We couldn't solve the world or this issue in just a few minutes, but thank you for participating. I am going to invite you to put into the chat comments from your group, from your breakout group that you want to put in. The chat is going to remain open for just a little bit, but in order to keep us on our time schedule and to honor your time, if you would put comments in the chat, we're going to make that be available to everyone. Here is some of the things that I thought that as we look at our focus on educational right and keeping children in school and out of the criminal justice system, some possibilities or some approaches that we can have. I am very conscious with my daughter being an educator of taking the approach of coming alongside, of teachers, but look at developing a relationship and a possible approach or plan. And I think we do this as United Methodists anyway, is to adopt a school, maybe thinking about adopting a school in your community. This can be an effort of United Methodist Women. You can engage your whole church in this process, but develop a strategy or a plan to support the efforts in the school as you build a relationship. So May happens to be Teacher Appreciation Month. So maybe going into the school and appreciating the teachers, developing a relationship that way with doing things that appreciate. United Methodist Women are here to appreciate you, and setting up a care basket, that teachers can pull from or whatever, but things that would encourage and develop a relationship. In July, engage in back to school efforts. There's teachers have back to school needs, and the schools and students have needs. So maybe engage in back to school efforts. And in August, create opportunities that would allow you to be able to have learning opportunities together, a book club, encouraging teachers to come and do a book club on push out or taking excerpts from that. But I would caution us from going in and just assuming that teachers need to have the book push out and that we know what to do. We're developing a relationship to learn from them of how we can help develop a relationship to get at this process of keeping children out of the criminal justice system. Meet with teachers to listen to their needs and their concerns. Attend school board meetings and being on the front line with that. Look at opportunities to create equity policy. And that's talking with schools across the board. So for equity policies to move forward, you have to have the support of our counterparts, not just children who are in schools that are heavily populated of color, but across the board with all schools. Collaborate with other organizations in the community, and Donna Palmer has told us about that. We have some collaboration efforts that are in the chat, but collaborating with other organizations that are already doing the work. And like I said before, engage in our whole congregation. That is a process. In our congregation, our first step could be women and men. It's engaging them in the book push out from our Mission U. So those are some just thoughts that I had off the top of my head collectively as a conference that we can do as we move toward legislative steps to really make an impact. So what we want to do is to get at the grassroots problem of of children being expelled from school. So thank you for your comments and then for your feedback, and please put it in the chat. And Emily, I turn it over to you.
Thank you all for such a powerful morning. It is such a gift when United Methodist Women come together to share your experiences, your expertise, your biblical reflections, your stories, your information. Together, we are powerful. We're going to close out our morning with a litany, a closing prayer that's written by the extraordinary Marian Wright Edelman, familiar to many of you from her work as President Emerita of the Children's Defense Fund, a trusted UMW partner in the work to interrupt the school to prison pipeline. The Children's Defense Fund, Alex Haley Farm, located right near to at least some of you in Tennessee, in Clinton, Tennessee. So please join me. Please from home, join in the bold language. I'll read this moment and do read that bold language as we go through our closing prayer. Lord, I cannot preach like Martin Luther King Jr. or turn a poetic phrase like Maya Angelou or Robert Frost, but I care and am willing to
with the children.
Others for children.
I do not have Harriet Tubman's courage or Indira Gandhi's and Eleanor Roosevelt's political skills, but I care
and am willing to serve
and stand for the children.
I cannot sing like Fannie Lou or Aretha Franklin or organize like Ella Baker and Baird Rustin, but I care
And I am willing to serve and stand with children.
I am not holy like Archbishop Tutu, forgiving like President Mandela, or disciplined like Mahatma Gandhi, but I care
And am willing to serve and stand with others to serve children.
I am not brilliant like Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, Albert Einstein, or Elizabeth Cady Stanton, or as eloquent as Sojourner Truth and Booker T. Washington.
But I care and am willing to serve and stand with others for children.
I have not Mother Teresa's or Dorothy Day's saintliness, the Dalai Lama's or Cesar Chavez's gentle, tough spirits, but I care
and I'm willing to serve and stand with children.
God, it is not as easy as the 60s to frame an issue and forge a solution, but I care
and am willing
to serve and stand with others for children.
My mind and body are not so swift as in youth, and my energy comes in spurts, but I
care and I am willing to serve and stand with others for children.
I'm so young, nobody will listen. I'm not sure what to say or do, but I
care and I am willing to serve and stand with others for children.
I can't see or hear well, speak good English, stutter sometimes, and get real scared standing up before others. But
I care and I'm willing to serve and stand with others for children.
Lord, please use me as you will to save your children today and tomorrow, and to build a nation and world where no child is left behind and everyone feels welcome.
Amen.
Sisters, to serve with others, to stand for children, to care together. These are gifts of our Creator, and we stored them well. Thank you for your participation this morning, and thank you so much to President Donna, to Brittany for your hospitality, and for allowing me to join with you this morning. Many blessings on the rest of your day.
And the chat will remain open, so you still can put your words in the chat. Thank you. Thank you, Emily. Okay, Donna, I think we're good.
Have we
Look
heard
forward
from all
to-
the districts?
Let's see, I think our comments have now turned to thanks and appreciation for participating. So that is good. So thank you so much. I look forward to a debriefing and an evaluating process, and we'll do that by email. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you, Donna.